one of the fabulous songs from the latest Flaming Lips release, which is almost a couple of years old now, but I'm still loving it. Embryonic is the name of the release. Wayne Coyne, welcome back to Triple R. It's great to have
Well,
the Flaming Lips
back.
in town again.
Yeah.
The last time you were here was around the time that Embryonic
Yes,
came
we
out.
were off the air. Me and you were collectively trying to remember when not only when I was here, but when that record would have come out, or when it even would have come out in Australia. See, I mean,
yeah, who knows?
So
it's always a bit later than the rest of the world.
Now I don't remember, but I believe we were playing some of those songs. Yeah, I think it. The Embryonic allowed us to do just a little bit more of a radical rock set. I think for a long time we were playing a lot of songs off of the Soft Bulletin and Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, which are fun songs, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are very mellow. So I think we were somehow surprised that, we could play these songs and they're like rock and they're strange and powerful. Yeah.
It was, Embryonic was a wonderful kind of widescreen album for the Flaming Lips. You seem to be going in a lot of different directions. You gave yourselves a lot of freedom, and it was a double album.
You
really.
wouldn't think you would need to. I know it's a strange thing to say, because everybody always thinks like, well, the artists are free, but they're restricted by the record companies and by marketing and all this. But it's not. That's not really true. A lot of times, it's the artists themselves think, oh, this is the kind of music we should make, or you're dictated mostly by the limit of your ideas sometimes, and we discovered, I'm not saying this for the better or for the worse, but we've discovered that sometimes what we think we're going to do doesn't matter as much as what we actually do. And so when we were setting up, and you do this, when you're in groups, you have to have an idea of what you're going to do. You don't just walk into a studio and go, well, there's a lot of anxiety, and you try to prepare, and you try to, organize yourself so that you're, prepared to make music or whatever. But that's always a little bit of a mistake, because, there's what you're, for me, it's sort of like there's what you're trying to do, and then there's sort of what happens while you're in this mode of trying. But it's impossible, because if you don't do the other thing, you can't get to the subconscious creation, which is what. So when we were making Embryonic, we kind of went in there with this idea that we were going to make kind of a normal record for a little bit, and then we're going to make kind of a freak out record for a little bit. And since it was going to be a double album, we thought, well, we'll kind of mix and match them later on, and we'll have like 20 songs, and some will be very normal and some will be very weird. But I could kind of tell, even at the very beginning, we would not have a lot of enthusiasm for the normal songs, and every time we would kind of all relax and say, let's do one of the weird songs or whatever it was, we would come alive. It would be like energetic, because we didn't know what we were going to do. And so I think little by little, we ended up veering towards that because it was fun, new experience. And then sort of in the end, didn't use any of what we deemed as the normal songs. We went with all the kind of weird songs. And really, that's the best way to do stuff. Yes. I mean, to just follow your gut. You're this thing that's pulling you along. I mean, if a group like the Flaming Lips can't do that, then
who can?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I mean, it sort of felt to me like listening to it that Soft Bulletin, Yoshimi, and Mystics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were kind of a trilogy in a sense of there were certain elements that were sort of similar about those albums, and they those albums in themselves were sort of a rebirth for the band.
They were. No, you're exactly right. Yeah.
And brought you a new audience. There are a number of songs on those albums that became very popular, Yoshimi being a good example.
Classics. I mean, those are the songs that we're really known for.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. So they've set you up, in a sense, to be the band now that you really feel like you could be, you could go in any direction you want to go into.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to say. I mean, for artists to not feel as though they're restricted by their own past, I think is, maybe for some people it's just an impossible dream to think, well, what would we be, But, I mean, I know when we made the Soft Bulletin, we so much loved that kind of dramatic, existential pop sort of strange songwriting. We loved that. We almost said to ourselves we could make 10 records like this, if the world would allow us. But we wouldn't do it because, I mean, the Soft Bulletin, in the canon of the things that we created was such a celebrated, unique record that we almost thought, well, we can never do that again. And that way the Soft Bulletin stands as this moment. And I often think that artists will tend to water their own output. They'll water it down a little bit because they keep doing the same thing over and over. And I mean, as much as we thought we wanted to make that sort of music, again, we would get bored and we would go off in some other direction. And luckily, when we made the Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots record, we were all late compared to the rest of the world of people making music with computers. But we were all sort of finding these new little gadgets they were playing with. And I think we were basically writing the same sort of songs, but they were filled with all these other sounds. And luckily, it sounded like another record. But we are conscious of that a lot, that there's a thing that you do, and if you don't force yourself not to do it, you'll do it over and over and over. I think if aliens exist and they're watching us from outer space, they see that we do the same thing every day.
Yeah.
We think we're living this marvelous,
we're like
diverse
mice in a cage, aren't we? We just go round and round.
Well, we like what we like, But I think with art, you have to, accept, the unknown or something different or try new flavors. You have to. I tell this story a lot, but when, we travel the world and we get to eat at a lot of great restaurants, people will take us out and you'll eat exotic food from all over the world and not have to pay for it a lot of times, so it's great. So anyway, we'll go into, a restaurant where we've been and where we had this amazing, unique dish, and we'll go in there and we'll say, we want this. We know what we want because we had it before. It was the greatest thing ever. Bring that to us. And then they'll come back to us and say, well, we don't have that anymore. And you're crushed. You just go like, oh, my God, well, what do we have now? They say, well, don't worry. We'll bring you something else. And inevitably, every time that's happened, the thing that they brought us that we had no idea even existed is the greatest thing. Yeah. And so we learn that it's like we don't want to just be limited by what we can think of. We want to, have experiences and let it shape us. And so with music and art, that's the greatest thing that can happen is you can have something can stimulate you, and suddenly you're off making a ridiculous record like Embryonic.
Yes, that's right. That's a fantastic sentiment. Easy to say and hard to achieve.
It is. And I would say again that we're really lucky that we can go on these strange tangents and with skill and experience and all the things stumble upon some really fun things. And then, once you stumble upon two or three things, they push you even further to say, wow, well, maybe we can really do this. And
these are the things you can now do because you've been a band for, 30 years and you have the benefit of all this kind of experience.
I don't know. I struggle with that. I don't know. Sometimes I think knowing so much makes you think, oh, well, let's not do that. That's too hard. That's, that's impossible. Let's not try that. And knowing very little sometimes, you don't know where the difficulties are, and you just go and do it.
Naivety is good.
So I try to always remember that, you're always at the mercy of random good luck and bad luck. So, you may be trying something that's very hard, but you may get lucky, and then it's easy, Or you may be doing something that you don't know should be really easy, but you're just having some bad luck, and it's not working or whatever, But I think if you're persistent, which I think I am, I'm not saying that's good, but if you persist, I think you get past the good luck and the bad luck and say, oh, I think we can do this.
Very few bands give themselves that kind of freedom, though. Many bands are very sort of narrative song driven, if you like. There's a structure about their songs. There's not this kind of freedom that you get with Flaming Lips material. And I've always been very kind of fascinated by that line you've walked between, the structure of a pop song and then that more expansive, kind of more psychedelic sort of elements of the band. And how you kind of get that right.
No, you're right. It's the hardest thing to do because this idea of being a songwriter is a little bit of a curse because you think, oh, well, here's the melody and here's the lyrics and here's the chords and then but oftentimes those aren't the most, expressive songs. A lot of times it's made from sounds and sounds get, you can hear certain, textures and atmospheres and it evokes this whole world that you could never really sit down and write it. You kind of have to hope that it happens. But I would say having some songwriter skill is, just this desire to organize, and to say here's a story or here's a narrative that's going on. I think that is probably always helpful. Otherwise I think you could easily, and which we do a lot, just sit there and listen to yourself play for a couple hours.
Go off into noodle land.
But we want to be entertaining, not just to our audience, but to ourselves, to listen back and say, oh, we really, there was, it was intense and it had drama and had these things. But it's impossible. It's impossible to really know because a lot of it is done, it's cliched to say it, but kind of subconsciously, I mean, a lot of times when we're recording and mixing and all that, I'm drawing or reading or doing something. I'm trying not to actually pay complete attention so that I can actually hear it. Because once you get too absorbed in it, it's kind of like saying the same word over and over. You lose the perspective of what it is that you thought it was supposed to mean.
Yes.
And so, that doesn't always work either.
Yeah. So, some of your most successful songs have been more traditional songs, though, haven't they? Jelly, for example.
Well, no, I would say even like Do You Realize? In the sense is I mean, I could see why people like it. I mean, it's a very normal. I mean, there's bits of it that I don't think are normal. I think it has these little bits that sound very Flaming Lips-like, even when we did the very first demo of it. I remember singing that line to Stephen, the line where I say, do you realize that everyone you know someday will die? And I thought, that just seems too simple or too much of, maybe we should work harder on that. And then he would say, no, that's the best line. That's the Flaming Lips, why this is a Flaming Lips song. But yeah, I think a lot of times it's just very normal music. But what's normal is that it appeals to you. It's like having chocolate cake. I mean, it doesn't really have to be much more than that. It's pretty good.
I think the Flaming Lips songs are better for you than chocolate cake.
Now, we don't want to come across as though we want to restrict anybody in their indulgences. No,
dietary indulgences. Wayne Coyne's with me in the Triple R studios at Triple R. It's 4:30 here on Kinky Afro this afternoon.
That's the name of the show, Kinky Afro.
It is.
Yeah, I love that. All right, yeah.
Wayne, you've had a busy year, incredibly busy. I've been much entertained by the releases that have been coming out of the Flaming Lips camp this year. Let's fill our audience in on the one song a month releases that you've been doing, and there's been a lot of them.
It's even hard for me to keep track. I think we started. We've done Christmas music before, and we've done things associated with Halloween. So there's these concepts of us celebrating the days as they happen. And so in February in America, I don't know if it's true everywhere, but there's Valentine's Day falls in the middle of February, and we were considering doing a song a month, and everybody said, well, you should do a song for Valentine's Day. And so we did it, and then that started us off doing this thing where we were where we thought we could do a song. It's not really a song a month. I mean,
it's sort of an EP, regular EP.
Yeah, I mean, because really to do just simply a song a month and just to release it, just to release it online or something like that.
Well, lots of people have sort of done
that. Would be
before.
Simple.
Yeah.
That would be really...
You don't want to make things too simple.
Well, no, that wasn't really what we meant. I think we meant that we would arrive with something every month that is this this other venture that we've gone off to. So in the beginning, I don't think we really knew what all they would be. We just sort of thought, well, we'll think of some stuff and hope it works. And so we started to experiment around with these objects, and the object that has stayed has been the skull. And for some reason, the connection between our very first record that we ever made in 1983 had this skull. It wasn't a real skull. Everybody thought it was, that I'd stolen from science class in high school. And it was, for whatever the reason, we took some pictures that we liked, and it was on the cover. And so it became associated with this idea of our label being called Lovely Sorts of Death. And so we're 20 years into our contract with Warner Brothers, and this year is like the year where we're kind of an independent group. Us and Warner Brothers have decided that we would all try different things, and this would stand outside of our contract. And they want us to, and we wanted to. And so we're using the skull as the symbol of, like, here we are, like an independent band. Again, even though we're not. We're still on Warner Brothers. So anyway, we were experimenting with skulls, plastic skulls, and we had skulls that we were filling up with foam, and we'd gotten this great rubber that we had coated this one replica skull. It wasn't plastic, but it was a well-made replica of a human skull. And we coated it with some really drippy pink rubber.
Right.
Okay, really great feeling, strange object. And my wife has some very exotic perfumes, and one of them smells like bubble gum. And I'd sprayed this rubber fluorescent skull with some of this bubble gum perfume. Anyway, so we were having some parties at our house, and this bubblegum smelling rubber skull is there, and everybody's there, and they're picking it up, and they're saying, "Wayne, we want to eat this skull," and because they think it's made of bubblegum. And I said, "Well, I wish you could, but you can't, because it's really just rubber, even though it smells like bubblegum." But it made me think, why don't we see if we can make a skull out of bubblegum? Mm-hmm. And we would put music inside of it, and you'd have to eat it. Well, we tried to do that. And again, this is the elasticity of imagination. You have to be able to, so we couldn't make it out of bubblegum because none of the bubblegum manufacturers could figure out how it would stay together. But this weirdo guy who makes giant gummy candy,
like gummy bears, you mean?
Well, he's actually known for the guy he's made the world's largest gummy bear.
Right.
But he makes like worms and brains and all this stuff. We found him online. We called him up and said, "Would you want to do this skull with us?" And he was like, "Yeah." So immediately, just like 5 or 6 days after speaking to him on the phone, we had this prototype of this magnificent gummy candy skull. Right. And then we have a brain inside of that, and there's a USB inside that. And we like this idea that and of course, you don't have to eat it. I mean, you could cut it out. But the fun is that this isn't just another. Everybody has a toy now. I mean, every movie that comes out, you get them at McDonald's or whatever. There's a million of these objects. Everybody has them anymore. And we started to think we like the idea that it's kind of temporary. That's made of something that it's going to not exist forever. You're going to eat it or something. So we were compelled to do these things out of this fabulous. And gummy is kind of psychedelic, and it's got a lot of good things going for it. And so that pushed us along. So we made a couple of things. We made a fetus that held like that you could eat.
Gummy.
Yeah, a life-size gummy fetus. And not every candy manufacturer would want that, but we wanted that. Yeah.
So you're putting music inside these items, like a flash drive, is that right? And Well, a little USB thing, and those USBs can hold quite a bit. So I don't want people to think it's just a little bit of music. You can put quite a bit on that. And so the thing that we just did, the thing that came out at just the very beginning of November, end of October on Halloween in America. Is Halloween celebrated here? It's not. It's sort of celebrated. It seems to be getting bigger, actually. I know you're big on it.
I've always been big on it, but now in America, it's like even bigger than Christmas. I think okay. It's such a big event now. But anyway, so we were contemplating doing this 24-hour song. I mean, that was spurred on by doing the 6-hour song, which came out in a toy. I think what month would it have been? Maybe June or something. That this toy came out. So we were already poisoned by the perception of what a song could be by doing a song that was 6 hours long.
You actually played for 6 hours.
Well, no, I mean, see, I would reiterate and say, even though it is a song that lasts for 6 hours, we're recording artists. We're making sounds. So, I've always tried to make the distinction where it's like, there are groups that are like they're performers and they go into a studio. And they play, and you put a microphone in front of them, and when they get done playing, that's their record. Yeah. Well, we're not like that. Yeah. I mean, we make sound any way we can.
It's a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's just years and years of things that you just combine. You played, it wasn't the Beach Boys, but you played Good Vibrations.
Who was Psychic TV.
Oh, it was. There you go. But, I think even, there you go. That's awesome. I need to take a picture of that before I leave. But so, even since... and Brian Wilson wasn't the only one, but since those ideas of recordings were really, this collage of sound, almost like doing a painting or something. You could just make it. Well, that's how we do our recordings. Some of it is based on performance, but some of it is done through overdubs, and some of it is done by things that have never really played together at all. They're just put together. So 6-hour song we were able to do in Stephen's bedroom with mostly a computer setup and some drums and some things just right in his bedroom. and that was fun but painful, but it does change your idea of what, the length of a song could be. I mean, when we first started making this 6-hour song, to play for 20 minutes or 25 minutes at a time was a chore. It's like just a long time. But after you do that for a couple of weeks, it doesn't seem long. And so I think while we were deranged or our minds had been expanded or ruined, I don't know which one it was, we decided that we would do a 24-hour song. Oh, yeah. And the 24-hour, I mean, there was some logic to it. We knew past that there would be no mechanism by which we could even record it. I mean, there are limits to what these giant computer things can do. So we arrived at this 24-hour song, and we knew that we were trying to make a big sound odyssey poem about death. And so we'd been considering this for a long time. And then the idea that this Halloween, this day was going to come up, gave us a more of an, inertia, to say, let's do it for that. And there is a skull distributor, or bones distributor
a
place.
Real human skull we're talking now.
Now we're going from candy skulls to real human skulls. There's a bone distributor. I think he's the largest in the world, but he's based out of Oklahoma City. That's where I live in America. And I've known this guy. He's been there almost as long as the Flaming Lips have been there, and his shop has gotten bigger and bigger. So anyway, I know that he has these human skulls that you can buy.
Yes.
I know it sounds absurd, and it sounds illegal, but it's not.
Well, people donate them or whatever, and they go to medical research normally.
They do.
And not to the local rock band.
Well, I don't think it's intended to do just that, but I think, there's part of it is for people that find it interesting or fascinating or beautiful, however you want to look at it.
Artists. Yeah.
So I went in there and I told him I was going to try to do, 10 of these human skulls that would have this giant hard drive inside of it that contains this 24-hour song that we would release on Halloween because the song is about death and it would be inside a skull. So you see where it's not just a song a month. It's like this grand
it's
adventure
much more than a
to
song
conceptualize what this object would be, and then to have it come out at a certain time. And so this song came out at midnight on Halloween, and it was downloaded on a stream that you could hear at the same time. So, a lot of, trying to conceptualize what this moment is as opposed to it just being recorded music.
Of course. And you can buy this skull because I've seen pictures of it.
Well, you can't buy them now. Now
it's
they're
got
all
a molten.
Well, we didn't want it to just be a skull. We wanted to give it some sort of Flaming Lips flair to it. And we initially were going to try to. And see, this is going back to this idea we talked about earlier, where it's like a lot of experience versus no experience. Which one is better? Well, I thought, because I don't know very much about it, I thought you could dip a human skull, in chrome. You've seen like chrome, fenders and stuff like that. I just thought it was a liquid that you could dip something in, and I thought we should make it out of chrome. And everybody thought, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Well, that's not how chrome is made. It's not really like that. But we got sort of so caught up in the idea that we thought we still wanted it made out of chrome. So when we went to have something made, they said, well, you can't really do that. You have to make a sort of metal that this chrome will stick to. And so I thought, why don't we just pour metal over top of this skull? And it comes in an elaborate case as well, and the case has drips on it. And I just thought that's a very Flaming Lips kind of idea, that there's just molted metal somewhere in my house, and you just would pour it on the skull. And
it looks awesome in the pictures. I'd love to see one up
really
close.
Is beautiful. Yeah.
And Wayne, I saw your show down at Harvest on Sunday night. A fantastic, beautiful venue down at the Werribee Gardens to catch Werribee Mansion to catch the Flaming Lips. And you had some new toys, I thought, on stage. Is the musket that shoots the ticker tape? Is that that huge gun you had? Is that? I don't remember having that last time.
We have a arsenal of confetti shooters.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I have the handheld ones that I shoot.
Yeah.
While I'm running around.
I don't think I'd seen that big gun before.
Well, we have. Well, maybe not. Maybe last time we were here they were smaller. But since then I think we have a truckload of our equipment that will go all around the world. We have equipment in America and then equipment that goes everywhere else. So we have 2 batches now. So maybe it is a bigger bigger, more potent version of the Flaming Lips confetti launchers. We do. We go through a lot of confetti. I'm not proud of that.
I've got this vision of you kind of in your compound in Oklahoma City in the shed, kind of almost like the mad scientist kind of sitting there. Well, there's an element of that. Yeah. I mean, dreaming up new toys.
I do. I have a big compound where we do stuff. Even that's where we eat. We made the very first prototype of the gummy skull actually in my shop.
Right, okay.
We got a bunch of gummy and melted it down and put it into a mold. And that was actually how the guy figured out how to make the gummy. But yeah, in my shop we do all that. And then we have a big warehouse. So, again, I think this goes back to what you said earlier about being a band for 30 years. Little by little, some of those things you can amass some experience and some ways of doing things. And I'm lucky that it's all ours. A lot of groups, for better or for worse, they'll just rent things. You'll go out on a tour and you'll grab these things, you'll rent them, and then when you're done, it goes back. But our stuff, like I said, I don't know if it's good or bad, but we have it and we can always play with it and do different stuff with it, and it doesn't have to go away, and someone can't tell us what to do with it.
Yes,
and I think that for me has changed everything. That way we're able to, all the videos that you see while we're playing, all that is this, we just make it ourselves. This isn't, no one else has brought in it. This is all Flaming Lips engineered entertainment.
It wasn't always like that, the Flaming Lips shows, because I remember when you first came out back in, when was it, 1990, early 1990, that first tour, you didn't have all the bells and whistles.
Well, it's impossible. Back then, I don't think most of this stuff even existed. I mean, it didn't exist in a format that you could throw it on an airplane and ship it around somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to have, and it costs a lot of money, to not just to have it, figure out a way to make it work, and then figure out a way to ship it around the world. And, so yeah, I think there is a little bit of like, there's, you have to build up to this if you're lucky, or you just have to be a big popular band that makes tons of money and someone else does it all for you. Yeah. But I think we're lucky that we're, we were always interested in all that stuff. How does it work and all that, and having it to play with all the time. It's like having an instrument to play with all the time. You can just mess it with whenever you want. Like having a studio. I have a studio at my house. You can just do it whenever you want. You don't have to. You know what I mean? It relieves the pressure, and you're allowed to do stupid things and do them over and fail and try again. And when you don't have very much money or when you don't have very much time. You don't have those choices. So, I mean, I've built that in. I don't think our ideas are necessarily even good, but we try them over and over and over until it works.
Well, I mean, I think you're a band that have proven that really bands are only limited by their own imagination, and that a lot of bands are very self-limiting, in terms of, when you go and see a festival, these things are very evident that, the Flaming Lips are, in terms of a live performance, you're a cut above.
Well, but I would, in their defense, I would say by contrast, I think if every band did what we did after 10 of those, you'd probably be, sick of that as well. So I think by contrast, we get to do this thing that a lot of the other groups aren't doing. But I mean, I still would say we're based in this idea of expressive music, and I think no matter all this stuff, I think would not have any effect on the audience if you weren't compelled by what the music and the audience is feeling, what it's doing, But yeah, I just think when, we grew up liking that stuff, I mean, to me, it's all the same thing, this idea that you get to put on a show. But we get to play to a lot of big audiences. And I think, there's a lot of groups, they show up at a festival, and that's the largest audience that they're going to play to. And so if you're lucky like us and you get to play a lot of festivals, little by little you'd say, if we're going to be playing to this big audience, let's do bigger things. And it really is about that. It's not that we have this stuff and you don't. It's just when it's a big audience and you're standing sometimes maybe 100 yards away, you still want to be
entertained. We want to see something,
you want
don't
to see
you?
Something's happening.
Yeah.
And so that's mostly, I think that's why all groups do it, because it's like, there's a lot of people here. And we want everybody to be involved. We don't want it to start to be, boring by, 30 feet away. We want those people all the way in the back to still give us their energy. And when that happens, that transforms it into something else. Then it isn't really that you're just watching a group. You're in the middle of this massive love-giving community, which is It's
a powerful thing.
Yeah,
yes.
that's better than music. That's humans really making something happen. Yeah,
yes.
That's great. Yeah.
Since we're talking about big live shows, let's talk about Pink Floyd because because recently your most recent studio album is in fact a reversioning of Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah. But since then, this Pink Floyd record, now it's been celebrated for this past couple of years. But, we started to do this just on a whim, really a couple of years ago. It really had nothing to do with this resurgence of the Dark Side of the Moon or any of these reissues. We were getting ready to release Embryonic. And the way that iTunes, which is wonderful, but the way iTunes usually works is they want some exclusive tracks. So they're going to say, we're going to release this. We want there to be a couple of exclusive tracks that you can only get on iTunes. And they sent out a producer, and we're going to make a big deal out of it. But we didn't have any other material. Embryonic's such a weird record. It wasn't as though we had 10 other songs that we could just go in and do. And out of sheer frustration and a little bit of a joke, I just said, well, when you come out, we'll just record Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and we'll just do that. And I could tell that there was a little bit like, ooh. And I'm thinking they're going to say, no, let's not do that. Let's do, and there was a little bit of like, ooh, really? And I was like, well, I guess.
Why not?
Yeah, And we had messed around. I think any group that's been around as long as we have. People say a lot of bad things about this record because it's so popular, but musicians know it's a marvelous.
It's almost been ruined by the fact that it's on classic hits radio all the time, but it's an amazing album.
I think people with a cliched reaction to things may think that, but anybody that listens to it, and especially musicians and stuff, it's an uncannily perfect.
Yes.
It's
a very complex
production.
album, isn't it?
Awesome.
In terms of the time in which it was recorded, Dark Side of the Moon is extraordinary on a technical viewpoint in terms of the way that they actually had to.
Yeah. I think that's why it was so listened to when it came out, because you just didn't hear things like that. I was like 13 years old when my sister kept playing it in her bedroom, and you don't know who Pink Floyd is, and you don't know it's going to be the most popular record of all time or any of that. It's just great, emotional music. It's not. There's parts of what Pink Floyd do that's experimental, abstract, or whatever. But I don't think this music is. No. It's hard to listen to it and not be moved by it. The album itself, as you say, it's so iconic. That must have kind of given you a whole lot of sort of freedom, really, to sort of do whatever you wanted to do with it. Because a lot of people that I've spoken to, they would say the opposite. It's like, it's such a classic. Did you feel like you had to worry about messing with the arrangements? Like, no. Everybody knows it, so it almost leaves you the freedom to almost do anything you want. Some of it we took absolute liberties, and I don't really think resembles the Pink Floyd songs at all. It's the lyrics, and there's melody, and there's maybe even the same key that they played in, but virtually everything else we would just change and do whatever we want, know. But some of it we didn't. Some of it, there was, especially the song Us and Them. There's just an element of the way that these chord changes and melody and the pacing and everything that, for us anyway, if you change that, then you aren't really doing that song anymore. And I know that's weird because some songs are just versatile. Some songs you can almost do anything to them, and the meaning is still there. But with that one, it's a marvelous piece of music, and maybe it was just that we liked it a lot, and we just really wanted to play it the way it was. But of all of them, that one is probably the least changed by us. Yeah. But we, and like you were saying, to do something in 1973 that's this studio masterpiece, by today's standards, you can do all those things
easy peasy,
at your house.
Yeah, that's right.
10-years are doing that at their house.
Do it on your iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that someone probably will now that you've said it. Yeah. But that wasn't our intention. It wasn't to remake it. It was just to make, using their ideas and their music and make something else. So, but there are a lot of people who hold this Pink Floyd record to be like a sacred object, and you are not allowed to touch it.
Did you get some hate mail, did you?
Yeah. Well, you get that first. Yeah. You know, there were people who wanted to kill us. Yeah.
Right. Did the band ever get in touch and say they heard it?
Well, Pink Floyd are kind of like, I don't know if you know this tax collection agency in America called the IRS, you know. If Pink Floyd approves of what you're doing, you never hear of them. You know, they don't say anything. Right. They're like, if they didn't want you to do it, right? You would just mysteriously disappear.
You'd be in Guantanamo Bay.
I mean, we've done a couple of things, and it's only when you're dealing with these brand names that are so. You know, it isn't really even about the music. It's just that you get to be associated with Pink Floyd, and this is obviously a benefit to you. You're just the Flaming Lips, and we're Pink Floyd. And I totally agree with that. You know, but you don't consider that when you're making music. You know, we had done a thing a long time ago where we were doing a Michael Jackson song, and we weren't making fun of it. We just liked the music, but we didn't get too far down the road of recording it. And
they got a whiff of it.
Well, they said, "Well, we don't think you should do this," you know, and we'd rather you not. And then you're like, "Well," and then they said, "Well, we'll stop you from putting it out. So just don't bother," you know. We've tried to do a song by Prince, and he doesn't let you. I mean, you know, you can do it. I
didn't know you had to get permission from the artist to record one of their
songs. You normally don't have to. Right. But a lot of it is the circumstances as well. I mean, we were doing this for iTunes, and iTunes now has done their deal with Pink Floyd. But see, these are the secret things that are happening, and you don't know. I just think we're this silly band. We're going to do some Pink Floyd music. Who cares? But I think at the same time, iTunes was negotiating with Pink Floyd, and they didn't want to make some, you know,
make waves.
Yeah, yes. Have something, you know, cause more anxiety than was already there. So, but luckily, apparently Pink Floyd doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, aren't you
or
lucky?
I'd be dead. Yeah.
We'll hear a song from that album in a moment. But tell us, what's the immediate future hold? Are you going to continue releasing some Gummy Skulls for the next?
We are. Well, I think by the time I get home, we'll be starting to record something that will come out for Christmas, and we have a couple of really great things waiting. I've got some tracks from the band Deerhoof. I don't know if you know them.
Yes, they're coming out. Well, they've been out for a few times.
Great American group that we've played with quite a bit. Some tracks from them, and I'm also think I'm going to be able to do some tracks with Licky Lee. Do you know her? Yeah.
Swedish.
Great, crazy singer. Yeah. I met her just a week before we left for this. So one of those will happen, and then we'll probably put that out right before Christmas, and then play our great freak out for New Year's Eve. We always do a New Year's Eve show in Oklahoma City.
Oh, fantastic!
People from all over the world come and do drugs with us on New Year's Eve.
Do you realise it's become the theme, the sort of emblematic song of Oklahoma, hasn't it?
Well, it is in a sense, but I mean, you know, all the states in America, you know, there's 50 of them. You know, they all have. Ours doesn't. But anyway, some states will have this other rung of songs, and there's only, I think, 2 other states, but Oklahoma has one where there's not just the state song, there's the state folk song, the state country song, and luckily for us, the state rock song. Right. So the state folk song is by a very famous Oklahoman, by Woody Guthrie, who's, you know, he's been dead for a while. And the country song is done by a guy who isn't from Oklahoma, but somehow they thought it was appropriate, Bob Wills, who's from Texas, but he's also dead. And I think as they started to get these people doing songs, I think they secretly said, why don't we get someone who's still alive and make their song the state rock song? And so there was a big vote, and luckily we won. And so I think we're forever associated with this idea of being the state song, which it is in a sense, but not wholly just the state song.
I think it's wonderful that a band like the Flaming Lips can, achieve that, the official seal of approval from the state.
Well, no, it's beyond. It's ludicrous. If you could realize, don't you realize? If you could understand how conservative Oklahoma.
Well, I was going to say, has the governor been to?
That governor is no longer there. He served both of his terms. I mean, luckily, it was a very, that was a good time to be a little bit of a free thinker in Oklahoma. Right at the end of his stay was when he did these things that he believed in, he wanted to make happen, because he didn't have to worry about being reelected. If he did it the term before, everybody would have said, "You're crazy. We can't vote for you." So and when you're there, I mean, we even have a street named after us, which. And I try to remind people, these things are absurd, but it's real. It really is there. And it would have to hold some hope for weirdo artists or weirdo groups. And there's a lot of places around the world that are like Oklahoma City. You live there, you realize this isn't, an artist mecca, but this is where I live, this is where this is where I grew up. And you have this horrible choice to make, that do you leave your roots or whatever it is, do you leave where you're from and go to one of these places and try to make it, or you just say, this is where I live and this is where I'll make my art and my music. Well, we're lucky to be living in such a strange place and to be so celebrated. So, don't know if that will happen for everybody, but it is. It's absurd.
Well, maybe one day you can run for governor.
Even if I was governor for a day, it would be a great day. Yeah.
Wayne Coyne, thank you for coming into the Triple R Studios. It's been really fab to see you again. Enjoy your show in Melbourne tonight.
All right, well, thank you.